So in this video I'm going to attempt to review my Milwaukee cordless M18 heat gun, and if you're like me, before you buy any product you do a bit of research online to see if a product is suitable for you. Primarily I use YouTube, so that's what I'm going to do in this video and I hope it helps. So before I had a cheap Chinese mains corded heat gun here. This is a 2 kilowatt one. I think I bought it on Amazon. They're about £25, and this has got 3 fan speeds and then a temperature setting that goes from 0 to 9. And what I found was, because it's corded, you know, I didn't use this very often. I would use it when I was removing vinyl lettering from a van, but all the other times where I should be using a heat gun, I just wasn't bothering, because you had to plug it in and most of the time had to get an extension lead out. So I very rarely use this. So I did think long and hard whether I should be buying a cordless heat gun because of the lack of use I got out of this, and I really thought, well, all I'm going to be using it for is once or twice a month, and is it really worth the cost? But wow, I was so wrong. I have used this tool so often now. There are just so many jobs I use this for now. To be honest, it is probably one of the most used cordless tools I've got. I use it more than my drill. So it might be, well, let's say example, only last week I was defrosting an outdoor plastic stopcock because we had heavy snow and frost. And I used this, whereas I wouldn't have used that because it would have meant getting a very, very long extension lead out. I've worn my hands on it recently because it's winter. Bending conduit or plastic water pipe, I use it a lot for that. What I use it the most for is removing stickers, sticky number plate strips, or I'm changing number plates on cars quite frequently, so I use it for that. When I'm applying any sort of sticker, warm the sticker up and warm the surface up to get any moisture off, I use this. When I'm working on cars, warming up bits of plastic trim, so when I remove bits of dash or put things together, they don't, clips don't break because it's winter and the plastic gets brittle, and I warm it all up first. All sorts of jobs I'm using this for. Removing vinyl lettering off vehicles. If you're doing a whole vehicle, then yes, I would use the corded one still, because usually you're taking all day over it. But if you're just going up to the vehicle and doing 10 or 15 minutes worth, then I still use this and charge the battery up 2 or 3 times during the day. There are just so many times where I would use the cordless heat gun where I wouldn't have bothered getting that out of the drawer. For all those sort of jobs where you can do the job possibly without a heat gun, like removing a sticker, but if you get the heat gun out, 5 seconds of heat on it and then remove it, it softens up the glue, makes a much better job, particularly with cold plastics, stopping those plastics from breaking because they get cold and brittle. This thing is just absolutely brilliant. And obviously heat shrink when you're doing electrical work, that's very handy to have a heat gun. And you know, often I might be outside or a long way from the workshop or at a place where you don't have power. You're not going to get that out just to heat a bit of heat shrink, so you might use a lighter or a match, whereas you use a heat gun you get a much better job. So there's just time and time again I'm reaching for this to do a job where I don't necessarily need the heat, but the heat assists with the job and makes a much better job. And as I said, this has become a tool that I'm using so often, and I really wouldn't have believed it. I really, you know, I didn't use that very often. I went from years and years without having a heat gun at all, but now I've got this cordless one. I'm using it for all sorts of things. It is so handy. So if you're stripping paint or varnish, yes, you still need a corded heat gun. This produces a lot more heat and obviously has an endless running time. But most of the time you're using a heat gun, you're using it for seconds or a few minutes, and this does the job. So I bought this particular heat gun because I've already got the Milwaukee batteries, the M18 batteries. So in this case, 5 amp hour battery. So because I had the batteries, I just bought the bare tool, and this was 110 quid or so, and I've had it for just over 2 years now. I've just had a look online, and you can now get the bare tool for £85. So it is an awful lot of money compared to one of these, which is £25, but it has been so worth it. I'm using this maybe not quite daily, but I'm using this every other day at least. So as far as a cordless heat gun goes, then I suspect most of the cordless heat guns are the same. It is just an on and off switch and a heating element blowing air through. So whereas a corded one, you've got different fan speeds and you've got temper control up here, this doesn't have any of that. It's just on or off. However, you start to realise you don't need any of that. So to adjust the heat, you just move it further away from the object you're heating. And the fan, yeah, you don't need it. This is just one position, and you'll probably start seeing the elements glow. It gets to full, there it is glowing. It gets to full temperature apparently in 6 seconds, and that's now producing hot air. So it's as simple as that, just an on and off. As you can see here, there is this lever that's operated on both sides if you're left or right handed, and that's your safety switch, so you've got to push that down for it to operate. And if we look that side, it is just a lever that you can operate from either side. It's not great, it's a little bit loose, and sometimes you're using it from an angle and it sort of doesn't move further enough. It's a bit crude, but it does the job. You soon get used to it. And then on the back you've got this hook. This is a bit heavy duty for what it needs to be. It's a bit of bent metal. It sits there or there or there. To be honest, I've never used it. This thing is also very robust. I've dropped this many times onto a concrete floor from sort of 1 metre heights, and yeah, it's about 2 years 3 months old now, and yeah, it's been utterly reliable. As far as the temperature goes, obviously these don't get as hot as a corded heat gun does. This apparently will go up to about 600 degrees centigrade. This apparently is 470. However, you would have to be very close to the nozzle here to get that temperature. I think at this sort of distance it's probably more like 200 or 300 degrees. But anyway, it's hot enough to do the majority of jobs. As I said, it's not going to be the right temperature for stripping paint, but for heat shrink, melting plastic, conduit, removing stickers, all the sort of things that I'm doing day to day that a heat gun's got to do, it does the job, and it is plenty hot enough, so that's not an issue. Let's just I'm just going to lock it on with a bit of tape there. Right, so that should be getting up to temperature. So yeah, at 10 centimeters there, that's too hot now to hold my hand. So I'm 20 centimeters there, and that is just that's getting too hot, but that's just bearable. So yeah, still plenty hot enough. I can't get my hand any hotter than that. However, that does take sort of 10 seconds to get up to that sort of temperature. A lot of the time I'm switching it on, only using it for 10 seconds or so, usually pretty close, and it works just fine. It's getting up to enough temperature to warm up the plastic or whatever I'm doing at the time. But if you're doing anything that's a bit delicate, then you've obviously got to hold it further away to adjust the temperature. And as far as fan speed goes, that is 30 centimeters away. I can still feel it, but there's not much of an airflow at that distance. Yeah, you're looking at about a foot away, and then it's warm, but you can't feel the moving air. You can certainly feel the moving air blowing over my hand there at 20 centimeters. So that's the sort of power of the fan. It gives you an idea. As you can see there, it's got an LED which comes on all the time it's being used, and that does point the light in the right place. That's quite nice as well, particularly if you're in the footwell of a car or whatever. warming up some heat shrink, or just sort of generally warming plastic before you start pulling plastic trim apart, it's certainly very handy to have that LED. So next, run time. I've got a 5 amp hour battery on it, an M18 battery in this case, and it is fully charged. So I'm going to now run it. So what I'm going to do is switch it on again, hold the trigger with the masking tape and run the stopwatch. So we've got to add 5 seconds onto that, but I will leave that running and see how long it lasts. Right, I've just pushed that and we're down to 2 bars and it's only been 45 seconds. So this is going to be a bit of a fail, because I think this battery isn't up to scratch, because it doesn't drop that quick under normal use. So either this battery is very cold, or it's one of the old ones, because that dropped to 2 bars straight away, and I haven't found that in reality when I'm using it. But anyway, I'll run with this for now, and if this is going to keep dropping, then I'll have to go and find another battery. Even so, it's now been 4.5 minutes. It's on 1 bar, but still working fine. So it's been 6 minutes. We're still on 1 bar on the battery, still getting hot. The other thing to note is it doesn't get hot at all. Obviously that metal nozzle is going to be hot, but all of this plastic ring is stone cold. It's really well insulated. So we're 10.5 minutes in and this is still going fine. You can see there, still very hot. So we're 13 minutes in and the light is now starting to flash, but still going for now. So we're now 16 minutes in, and I think I just heard the fan speed reduce a fraction, but that is still hot, very hot. If anything, that could be getting hotter as the fan reduces. But yeah, we're obviously getting near the end of its run time now. So nearly 17 minutes and this is still going. So obviously this is using the 5 amp hour battery, and if you want a tool that lasts longer, you would use a bigger battery. Being the Milwaukee M18 system, it's the same size mount for any battery, so you can have much bigger batteries if you wanted a tool like this to last longer. But we're now at 17 minutes and that is still hot, but yeah, the fan is winding down. So we've probably got about an 18-minute run time on a 5 amp hour battery, which is 3 years old, and also it's cold today. We're in winter. It's only about 5 degrees and the batteries are in the workshop overnight, so a relatively cold battery as well. So yeah, that's it. That's winding down, so we're looking at about an 18-minute run time there. And as you can see, that is cooling down now as well. So still usable. That would still melt heat shrink just fine, but yeah, 18 minutes. So I'm going to stop that there. It's proved a point, but anyway, I don't want to completely ruin my battery cells by running that down to absolutely nothing. So the battery's flashing at 1 bar and we've got 18 minutes of usable run time with a 3-year-old 5 amp hour battery in the winter. So as a heat gun, this thing probably isn't much different to a Milwaukee or any other cordless heat gun. But what it is it's basic, it's robust, and it's just brilliant. I think this has been my biggest surprise of any power tool I've got. Since buying it, I'm using this more than any other tool. It's quite surprising how many jobs that I now use a heat gun for, just to assist that job. I just wouldn't have believed it before. So these are expensive, but it's well worth it. So I couldn't rate this tool highly enough. It is very basic. It just produces heat, but it is very robust. It's been dropped many times. It's now over 2 years old and is still working fine, but it's just extremely handy. So that will do for this video. If you found it useful, please do click that thumbs up button on YouTube. That really does help other people find the channels. Do subscribe, and I'll see you on another video.